Okay. All right, everybody. So we started off with a wire armature, maybe something like this. This one's actually not finished. It needs more wire to be able to be plastered. But then we took our plaster and we covered our armature with it. So I'm making a pear, but as I turn this around in the light, you can probably see that it's an awful lumpy, bumpy pear, right? And I know fruits and foods can grow in a lot of different ways, but this is not the look I'm going for my pear, okay? It's got too many lumps and bumps, and it's got a corner. I've never seen a pear that has a corner on it before. So today we're going to work on our second layer, and this one has a little bit more, it's easier to work with because you've got more of a solid base now to start off on, okay? So I've got my water, I've got my plaster strips. Please remember, do not drip water over the bin of strips. I'm finding so many that have been ruined by water being dripped on them. So I've got my piece of plaster, and for this one, I'm going to kind of squish it up, kind of wad it up, because what I'm looking to do is fill in this dip right here. I want to get rid of that corner by filling in the dip. So I'm just kind of laying the plaster into that hole and smoothing the edges down really well. And already that hole is a lot less dippy. You know what I mean? So the one thing though about this plaster that's been drying overnight, it is now kind of like a sponge. It's going to want to take some of the water out of your strips and keep it for itself. So you might find yourself needing to dip your fingers in a little bit more water when you're smoothing these out. But for me, it's a lot easier to kind of smooth that texture and get rid of those holes because I've now got something solid that I can kind of push onto, okay? So I've kind of gotten this edge here a lot curvier, but I've still got this corner up here. So I'm getting there, but I've got more work to do. Now, if you haven't finished your first layer, you need to finish that and let your piece sit for 10 minutes. So look at the clock, notice what time it is, and know what time 10 minutes will be. And then when you see that time on the clock, you know that you've waited 10 minutes and you can get back into it. But plaster needs to wait about 10 minutes at least between layers. So while you are waiting for your plaster layer to dry enough that you can move on, or to set up enough that you can move on, you can be cutting more plaster strips. Remember, we want them to be about 3 inches wide. You have to cut them over your bin to catch all that dust. And also, I'm the only person who's been using this water container, and I used it all the way down. There was no water left in it, and at the bottom was so much kind of gritty plaster. Now, think about when you're cutting your strips and all that dust that kind of flies out. When you dip it into the water, some of that dust is staying in the water too. So don't be grossed out like, what is this in my water? Or I mean, you can be grossed out, but I'm here to tell you it's just the plaster dust that's gotten in there. It's been activated by the water and is now kind of turning into almost like sand or a solid piece or something, and it's okay. If your water runs out, you may fill it up at the sink, but do not dump out what's in there. We can't get any plaster near the sink. Make sure that you are filling it no more than halfway and that you are not getting plaster anywhere near or at any risk at all of possibly going down the drain. Okay? Now, this is going to be my second layer. I'm still going to put a third one on probably tomorrow. So I can't fix every lump and bump in one go of it, but already it's so much more on this side, kind of smoother, than we're still seeing these corners and angles over here. So every part, every layer, every bit is going to help a little bit at a time till I end up with something smooth. So this is pretty smooth on this side, but if we look over here, it's still very lumpy, bumpy. So I think you can kind of see the difference there. This one, I've done my whole second layer. It's still not perfect. I'm still seeing some lump bumps, but it's good for a second layer. So tomorrow I'll come in with my third layer and do my final smoothing. Now, one thing that I forgot to tell one of my classes is, remember all those scrap wires we had? And you kind of had some leftover pieces maybe, like this. When you're working in a place, and it might not happen to you, it kind of depends on what your sculpture or your miniature monument is, but sometimes you want to keep an edge kind of crisp, and it might be in a little space where you can't really fit your finger because maybe your finger is too big. You can take your wire and kind of push it into those spaces that are a little too big for your finger, but the wire can fit in there. So I kind of pushed that in. Mine, I can get my finger in there, but some people can't. And once we start to kind of build up details, like you're starting to put noses on faces and things like that, that little wire is going to be an excellent tool for us to use. So I'm going to stop here. I'm going to stop the video here, but I need to keep working to get these kind of lumps and bumps taken care of. Get it to look more like this, which is a nice second layer look, and then third layer will come tomorrow. Again, remember, you shouldn't see any of those holes in the gauze. You should be able to smooth them out completely today. All right, here we go.